So welcome, everybody. I'm Al Wagner, CEO of Wholesale Payroll, and with me today is David, and an MBA in obviously in business, and somebody that I have a great deal of respect for, who has helped tremendously a variety of businesses, that some of which I do know, some of which I don't. And I've asked him to record this video with me specifically to help gain some clarity, put a little light on the landscape, if you will, of who and what wholesale payroll is, what it's about, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and all those kind of good questions. And in our green room, just before we hit record, David had some really good questions for me. And I said, don't tell me anymore, because I want to be on the spot with David so that it's as if you're actually the one asking the questions. So with that, David, thank you.
Great to be here.
We totally did this impromptu. I asked you about 3 hours ago and you said, yeah, I'll get on that. So cool. I appreciate that very much.
Sure thing. Nope. Glad to do that. Glad to do that. And so Al, I've known you for quite some time, and I know you've run an operation that's been very successful. Tell me about what you are doing now.
I'm going to segue that into the green room question, which was the why am I doing what I'm doing right now? So I'll try to give you a short answer for a very long question, or a very long answer, because I can pontificate for quite some time. Having been a CPA from 94 to 2020, I got in the payroll space back in 2006. And that's a lot of the things that you and I have talked about over the last number of years, is issues related to payroll and some finance and accounting stuff. And a number of years ago, there was a major shift, and I had a choice to make. And you and I have never talked about this part. That choice was, do I stay in the payroll industry at all? And because I was forced to have to make a very critical decision, the software that I was using was, at that time, was going to be decommissioned. And I had a very vague time frame for when this was going to happen. And after having spent nearly 15 years at that point building up a payroll business and servicing hundreds of customers across multiple states, I didn't feel it was the right ethical and moral thing to do to simply get out and leave those customers in the lurch, right? And so what could I do? I could find some other softwares. I could sell it to somebody else. As I said, I could get out, or the option that we chose, build our own. And I'm not a techie computer guy, right? I don't know how to code. Mm-hmm. So it was a very daunting decision to make. And with our CEO, Jessica Clark, we decided we need to do this. We need to solve problems that I faced for the last 15, 16, 17 years in the payroll space as a practitioner, mm-hmm. because no one was answering that call. Lots of practitioners that I've talked to over the years, we're all facing the same challenges. So I said, okay, with Jessica, we approached a few people, our CFO, Jim Murray, our CTO, Kevin Ferentz, our VP of Digital, Garrett McLeod, and a few other folks as well. And were they capable, willing, and wanting to be a part of something, in this case, a payroll software company, to come up with a product that worked for the practitioner. And if it worked for the practitioner, it meant it worked for the employers. Mm-hmm. Does that answer that question?
Yes. No, that's interesting.
It's both the what and the why right there.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Because that still exists. Those problems still exist today. And even with my experience, I think I've had experience with 3, coming up on 4, and it's a challenge. It's very.
So what challenges? I'm going to do a little give and take on this one.
Good.
With you, David. Well, what kind of challenges have you faced as a practitioner? You're a private practitioner, right? Being in the corporate world.
Yeah. One is the flexibility of use. 2, ease of access to what I would consider simple information. Systems that don't talk to each other, or features that aren't available. One simple thing was, a lot of companies force you into using their system. So they design ways to force you to purchase another add-on. You might already have a method of capturing, let's say, timesheet data or hours or something like that. Well, they don't allow you to upload that data into their system, but you can buy their added feature. So, it's for the purposes of selling and not really for the purpose of integrating with the company that they're being of service to, or complicated ways of getting access to information or even limited information. When you want to write reports or pull down information or what have you, many times, it's not a relational database type thing where you can pick and choose all the different features. Many times you'd have to go to one area of reporting, say, for example, HR data, and you can get the HR data there, and then you can get the time data there, or you can get the money data there. And then you would be forced to have to figure out how am I going to merge all this stuff together to create the report that I want. To me, those are two huge operational things because, labor cost in many service industries, especially, is the largest component of cost, for that organization. And, you have to have good, inventive, creative ways of being able to get access to it or measure efficiencies or, put their operational information together with their payroll information. So, yeah, those are problems.
And they're not solved by the majority of providers today. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So as a practitioner who's been in the space a long time, I have clients that have asked for that exact type of flexibility and integration in what we were providing. And even then, like, well, I'm fairly limited because it's not our software. We're leveraging somebody else's. And while we can ask for all that kind of additional features, tools and features, if it's not on their roadmap to provide, or more important, if it's not in their business model, and to your point earlier, that it's all about additional sales, creating more revenue streams and things like that. I'm actually it was quite surprising for me to hear you say that, because typically I don't hear that coming from what I'll call the end user, right? I hear it from a lot of practitioners, but I don't really, in all my years, I can't say that you're in a quasi role, right? Because you're as a financial guy and an accountant, a bookkeeper, and a financial consultant, and a controller, and a CFO, and you've run the gamut of all of those things and have a really wide breadth of experience in all these things. So that was, you hit on some things there that, as a practitioner, how do we solve those things? And without being really overly technical and detailed within the wholesale payroll platform, we're in a position to answer that call. And that, for me, is one of the more exciting things about being on the software side. It's really interesting in terms of when a request like this comes in, how do you field that request? How do you put that on a roadmap? Is it important to more than just you? Now, I personally know for sure that it is, but for somebody who doesn't really maybe know the payroll space or thinks it's really mature, which it is, right? Payroll's been around for decades, software, and lots of competitors in the space. Why in the world would we want to tackle this? And it's for exactly the things that you just mentioned.
Perfect.
Creating something that's easy to use, something that has the power and flexibility. And so what I'm going to share, I want to see if this makes sense to you.
Well, let me interrupt you, and I'm going to throw another ball there to you. And aside from all those things that I was complaining about before, on top of that, they'll say, well, send us an email or leave us a message, and we hope we get back with you. And the other thing that I would like is for somebody to actually understand what I'm asking for. Because many times I'll have to repeat it. And they just won't comprehend the concept of what we're trying to achieve. So
What do you attribute that to?
people that don't have the experience or the knowledge, or maybe not even the interest or concern to even solve or evaluate the problem, you know?
That's super, super interesting to hear. And
Sir.
so that I make sure that I'm comprehending what you're talking about, I'm going to restate it in a different way and see if I'm on the same page. Would it be fair then to conclude the folks that you end up talking to with the providers that you have had in the past at their, I'll call tier 1, tier 2 levels of support,
Yes.
are inexperienced,
Yes.
undertrained,
Yes.
and constantly revolving?
Yes. Yes.
And the culmination of that results in an inability to actually communicate with the company that is being leveraged to even ask their request to get that support functionality out of them. Forget the actual tools functionality, just the support functionality.
Correct.
Have I restated that?
Exactly. I'll give you
Okay.
the pass. I'll give the company the pass on the fact that you don't have this feature available. But don't put me off to 2 or 3 or 4 people making me call back again and again and again to help compensate for the lack of integration that this company has with our operations.
I want to take a minute to ask another or restate something else that you've mentioned a couple times. Integrations. In your experience, do you believe it would be fair to say the lack of that ability or willingness to integrate could be as a result of legacy systems that are decades old?
Legacy or companies purchasing other systems and trying to force them into their system because somebody made a deal, but they really didn't vet it out to make sure it was actually going to work for them.
Very interesting. So we have company purchases, there'd be technology changes.
Yep.
And the merger of all of those things together doesn't always work, does it?
No.
Would it, in your financial experience, would it be fair to say, and we're taking a really interesting approach to this. This is why these kinds of conversations are so cool. Would you believe it's fair to say some of the more larger players are really in a position to not necessarily be able to reconstruct those legacy systems, and when they acquire these other, maybe with even newer technology, and they try to amalgamate them together, there's no amount of fire that can make that come together like refining gold?
Yeah, I think that's possible. And my impression, my guess is the company itself doesn't really see the value of the request. And many times I think it's the company themselves not really understanding the magnitude of what they're missing out on by not having that information. And so my thought is, well, here I am, I'm a simple guy, running a company, trying to be as efficient as possible. And if you don't have it, take it as an idea and see about, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's having this problem. And take that concept and see if you can deploy it to other companies and make it a marketable opportunity for you. But, because they're so big, they're so large, and the people that I'm dealing with typically don't have the entrepreneurial spirit to consider that as a concept, it kind of dies.
So no suggestion box really that has any end result that you can,
Right.
at least that you can see, touch, or feel.
Right.
Interesting. On a total side note, because it's wholesale payroll when we took this out into the public last year. Now, not the product for actual live processing, the concept and some of what we were doing, and we took it out into the professional space. We decided to come up with what we call the Client Advisory Council. Now, I know other companies do this kind of, what do you call it? Feedback groups and things like that. In our case, we have a roadmap of tools, features, and functions that we believe are critical. And the reason we believe they're critical, and this is, I had an idea, it came in, left, and now came back. Would you believe it's fair to say that the companies that you have been dealing with, not the employers, but the software company, the payroll software providers, have they lost touch with both the professional and the employer insofar as they don't remember what got them there and they don't have boots on the ground using their own product?
Correct.
You feel that that's pretty fair to say?
It's extremely fair to say. As a matter of fact, that's a very conservative statement.
Make it aggressive. What would you say?
They're out of touch. They're really out of touch. Nothing stays the same. Nothing
Fair
is the same, except for maybe accounting, debits and credits. What started with the Greeks, they've always been there. That's probably not going anywhere. But how businesses are challenged, how they're evolving, the efficiencies that they need in dollars and productivity. And again, going back towards the most significant cost of many businesses is with time and labor and productivity. And payroll is the source of where all that information is recorded. I think they would benefit themselves if they had options like that, where they're actually taking all the complaints that come in, or even polling. Sit down with some of your customers, some of your major customers, some customers from different from different industries, to say, well, how are you really using it? Show us what you do every day. What else do you have to do? What else do you have to do in order to get the information you need to effectively manage your business?
Yeah.
So do that one, and then actually take that information, package it, and sell it to the next guy, because he's probably not the only one that needs it.
What did you just say? And bugger. I gotta get my notepad down, David, and I gotta write that, because this conversation is going to go in all kinds of directions. I can see that already. You had said, shoot, I'm going to forget what that was already.
No, I'm going to tell you, because it's actually expanding upon the things that you're developing. One, you're a small company. People can get in touch with you. People can get in touch with people that are in leadership in your organization. You're not going to leave the success of your company to chance on a sales rep. And whenever I've had my experiences, I either get the sales rep that sold us the product, and that's my point of contact for any future outgoing work, or it's a call tree that I call into, and I get somebody, and I'm going to get different people of varying levels of experience. Now, if it's a small group, I might get maybe that same person if I call back 3 or 4 different times. But in your case, when you've got a small organization, be attentive to the customer, and then you have an actual advisory group of people that are set up to field these questions that come from employers. Okay.
So,
and not that you necessarily have to react to the question, but in the process of developing, whether it's healthcare, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's hospitality, or what have you, wherever you're in, we're all like kind of organizations. We all need the same or similar types of information. And you could easily take that advisory group and develop it into something else that would allow for a new feature within your company.
So I remember what you said that I wanted to circle back on, which has to do with everything you just said too. Before I go there, because now I have it written down, so I'm not going to forget. Part of the why of what wholesale payroll represents and the reason, a reason of many. And it was we have a PhD consultant who's very much like you, actually, and really comes at things from as objective of a viewpoint and tries to take the subjective stuff and try to make it as objective as possible as well. And he made a comment, gosh, this is going back maybe a year and a half ago. And he said, the payroll industry in and of itself, the accounting industry, I want to ask you if this resonates with you. We're in what's known as a balanced feedback loop. And a balanced feedback loop is a system, and it can be in anything, where we're used to doing something a certain way, and those that provide the solutions to the things that we're doing continue to provide the same things over and over again, creating that loop, and it's balanced because we keep doing the same thing. And we don't expect to see much innovation. We don't really expect to see improvement or change in what we're doing. Here's our debits and credits. Here's our financial software. Here's the reports that we're going to get out of the box. And that whole thing just stays the same year after year after year, decade after decade. Does that resonate with you?
It does.
Are you familiar with the show Game of Thrones?
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay. The main protagonist in that is, well, one of the main protagonists is the young girl who becomes the dragon queen and all that stuff, right? You're familiar with at least that part?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And do you know one of her titles is called the Breaker of Chains?
No, I didn't.
Does that ring a bell? Okay. In the show, that's part of her title. And I'm a big Game of Thrones fan. So is Jess. And we consider ourselves the breaker of chains of that balanced feedback loop, because it's awful to be stuck in it. And I share all of that for two reasons. One, the client advisory council that I touched on and that we're talking about, particularly for suggestions of improvements, product features, removal of features or tools that don't make sense, controlling iteration is really going to be left to our client advisory council. So we have our roadmap of things that we're going to do and what we're going to use to launch with and what we're going to do over the next, what looks like the next 12 to 18 months of product improvement, integration opportunities, things like that. And while it is important to us, perhaps it's not important to them. So that council has, on a monthly basis, the ability to see our roadmaps and to tell us, oh no, this one's more important than that one. And by the number of suggestions that come in, those suggestions, guess who those get routed to? The client advisory council.
Good.
They're the boots on the ground. These are the folks. This is where I think innovation really comes in key. And because of something else you said, which is I want to circle back around to that, because I do it all the time with software. How do we hack it to get the answer? What's our workaround? Because it's not doing what I want it to do. How can I make it do what we want it to do? And our CTO, Kevin, his approach is if somebody has to do that, we should be providing it. Plain and simple. They shouldn't have to do any kind of workaround to get the product to do what it's intended to do. And if we've just missed the mark, we need to fix it. We need to improve upon it. We need to add to it. Or maybe take something away because it's interfering. Whatever the case is, right? It's taking that, what do you do on an everyday basis? And that kind of goes back for me, like, why are we here? It's because the folks that I've dealt with, or the softwares and the companies that I've had to interact with, they don't do exactly what you're talking about, or rather they do exactly what you're talking about, and they don't do what it is that we need. We don't have the ability to say, hey guys, I'm having to do this workaround in order to get this. And or I love this one. I know it works on this company employer that I'm working on, but I can't get it to work on this one. Why is that? And you get no answer.
Mhm.
All right. They don't know why it's not working, or they don't understand why it is working.
Sure.
Oh my goodness. Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous.
Sure.
And
Well, let me ask you this: is the information coming to the client advisory council, is it passive or active?
it's real time. It's real time.
I understand that, but I know people, and this goes back to your breaking the chain moniker. You know, people will only ask you things if they know how to ask,
Ooh, good point.
right? And many times, because we get into these habits, and CEOs only know what to receive because they've received it in the past, is there an opportunity to make it an active group through surveys, sit downs,
Oh, I think you're going to like my answer to this.
focus groups, you know,
Yes.
some way,
There's the term. That was the term I was looking for earlier. Focus groups. Yeah, thank you.
but some way to get actively involved with people like me,
Yeah.
that soup to nuts, from 30,000 foot to, you know, ground level, understand what's needed in order to get the information that I need to run more efficiently.
Our solution to that request is we have 36 members inside the Client Advisory Council. So it's not like it's a small group. That's a fairly sizable group.
It is.
And I asked them several months ago. In fact, it was January. I said, when the product launches and you guys have time to really digest it, get neck deep in it all, and have some time with it, and we do these every month. It's the third Tuesday of every month. What do you think about broadcasting those meetings live? And we'll have somebody from our side. Now they're subscriber led. So we actually have 3 of those 36 run the meeting. It's not something that we participate on from the company perspective, but it is a subscriber group that is our interface, right? So what do you think about if we were to broadcast that live on YouTube or Facebook or all of them, and we monitor those sites, and anybody can participate? They can watch that thing live and interact live to say, oh, great suggestion. Oh no, that one's awful. Or, hey, have you guys thought about this? And monitor that kind of level of communication, right? Because it's a really challenging problem to try to solve, of when you have thousands of people and they all have different needs, wants, and desires. How do you accommodate all of them? The answer is you can't. We'll never be able to get everything. But if there are enough people that participate in that kind of feedback, where they can see what's being discussed, they can then vote on it in a poll. Hey, what do you think about us doing it this thing first, or that thing first? Or even going down the path of offering something, whatever it might be, and allow that audience that active participation.
That's good.
And that group, hands down, they thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. They're like, yep, we don't mind. We will do that. We would be happy to do that.
That's good.
And just to create that level of accountability, not just for that group, for us, and for the paid and ultimate user. So I want to take just a minute and clarify something in terms of what we do as a company, and kind of that feedback loop and why we're different. And one of the things that we're different about as a practitioner dealing with these companies. And the 3 biggest players in the space today are ADP. They're number one. If you would believe it, Intuit has come into the second position for as
Really?
of either 21 or it was either 20 or 21. They edged out Paychex.
Really? Wow.
Those are the three biggest players in the space. And Paychex and ADP, interesting enough, will deal at an enterprise level where Intuit does not. Right? They have a finite limit of employees that they'll allow any individual company to have in their payroll platform. And yet they're in the second position with almost 11% market share.
I think that speaks to the volume and the opportunity that exists in this population that need that kind of help.
Well, I think you're exactly right with that, because otherwise, what would be the point of even getting it? Because to spend this kind of time, money, and energy to create a product that is a super complex, engineered, architected, and deployed, implemented, all these fun and wonderful words. It would be crazy to just do it for ourselves, right? So volume is critical. And to your point, right, there's about 7.9 million small, medium-sized businesses in the United States. So plenty of opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's so our competition, the folks that we just talked about. And in the space that you've been in over the course of your career, I'm curious whether or not you've ever had this happen. We as a professional base have referred and built these businesses really to a large degree for these companies because we refer them, right? As an accountant, a bookkeeper, enrolled agent, tax preparer, CPA, we tell our clients, hey, go use this, that, or the other thing, because we're familiar with it, or it's a good product, good service, whatever the case is. And over the course of time, these companies have taken a completely different approach to how that's happened. And it's no longer the professional that's providing the business. They now go direct and compete against the professional in offering these services, and not just that direct service, but other verticals as well, right? They get into insurance and banking and retirement benefits and all of the tentacles that payroll does touch. These guys now, they offer something, and they're continually soliciting. What happens to an organization that does that? Well, in general, would you agree that they have to create a fairly immense support structure?
Yep.
And in doing that, they have to account for the lowest common denominator.
Yep.
Which is the person at whatever age, at whatever skill level, that it says, oh, I'm going to open up my own business, but I don't know a thing about finance, accounting, payroll, tax, nothing. And I don't want to learn it, but I want to do it on my own because I got to save the money or whatever the case is. And so you have to create a support structure that helps that particular individual. So wholesale payroll, Dave, has taken a completely different approach. Of the 500, thereabout 520 so-ish competitors, I can't tell you that there might be more than a dozen, and those solutions are unique in them of themselves, that don't support what is ultimately the end user, which is the small business, right? So the end user of payroll is the guy or gal sitting back, entering the time for either themselves or their employees or whatever, contractors and such. In wholesale payroll's case, we only sell the product to an actual practitioner, somebody who's in the space, because to something you said earlier, when you need to get help, is it easier to call me, the guy who's your resource, or the software company who's selling thousands of units, tens of thousands of units all across the country and or world? Who's the best resource for you to contact?
Exactly.
It's likely going to be me, right?
Exactly.
As the local practitioner to you.
Exactly.
Well, that's the approach that wholesale payroll took. We don't sell to the directly to the company that has the employees. We sell our product to the professional who that company is going to call in the first place.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for us as an organization? One, we keep extremely streamlined, but it also means from a product perspective, we have to be robust, flexible, and powerful with speed.
Mhm.
Think about that,
Mhm.
right? So we approach all of this the data is agnostic to us. The verticals, some of the things that you talked about, like time clocks, and even I'll go to point of sale systems for the other gentleman that we were talking about in the restaurant space. We're agnostic towards all of that. So we have to be open to allowing that information to come in and consume it in such a way that you can leverage and use it.
Sure.
That is a completely different dynamic and approach to solving the payroll industry challenges that you face, I face,
Yeah.
our customers face. How's that resonate with you and what I'm saying?
Good. But I'm curious. I want to kind of back it up a little bit.
Sure.
And ask you a little bit about your vision. I mean, obviously you know a lot about what's going on, where it's at, things like that. But through this experience, how would you articulate your vision?
Not too many people ask me that question. I think it's probably one of the most important questions to understand out of any company, right? Small, medium, or large. The vision of wholesale payroll. Well, first off, it really is the product in and of itself, the company in and of itself, is something I came up with about 11 years ago. And it's taken this long in order to actually get the right team in place to be able to provide a solution or an answer to the vision. And that vision is to enable the professionals in the United States. We're a US-based company and we only service the United States. To provide for the guys and gals like me a tool that will help those individuals grow, scale, and profit. That's the vision.
Okay.
And on a side note, I really like to see the space turn into what it was always meant to be, which is a professional service that employers can rely upon with their chosen professional and not be handed off because that's the business model that somebody else has decided upon that both parties have to contend with, versus understanding that our vision is as we are a tool in the toolbox, and that's all that we should ever be. We should be the best tool, the most reliable tool, the most versatile tool that you can leverage for providing that service.
Sure.
And yet that's all we should ever be.
Sure.
Does that really answer kind of where that vision is?
Yep.
And we have currently no desire to leave the United States and provide services in other countries. There's enough to do in this country. And there are enough people that need our help here than worry about what's abroad.
Sure. So what's the value proposition to those folks that you're trying to service in your vision?
I would say the primary value proposition for wholesale payroll, Dave, is that we enable the payroll professional the ability to run their business how they deem fit, with a cost structure that allows them to scale and make more money as they want to grow, as they do grow, if they want to grow.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good.
Scalability and profitability.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about the market. I mean, I know you mentioned, the three big players, but how much are employers spending on an annual basis for services like this?
Yeah, the revenue right now, I can tell you that is about 60 billion as of 2021. $60 billion. That's a lot of ling. And Dave, so it's an interesting question because the market is divided into two camps. those that do it themselves and those that outsource it.
Mhm.
And so when we look at that, it's about 40-ish% that outsource that work. 60% of small, medium business still do it themselves.
No
Now they're
kidding.
leveraging something, right? They are still paying for a product somewhere
Right.
along the line.
Right.
And the primary motivation for a person who's doing it themselves is the perception of a cost savings. And so what we're seeing as a trend in the space is eliminating the middleman, the professional, and going to a direct model of a per employee or cost, where those big players now don't provide a wholesale, that's why we chose our name, a wholesale model to the professional to actually compete in that space. For 15 years, the product that I leveraged, by example, sold direct, but because of the wholesale price that I was receiving at scale, I could sell that same product underneath their price. Now, that was also part of their business model. That was part of the intent, but we're seeing that get wiped out.
Let's back up a sec. So we talked about the big three players.
Yep.
And you're saying that the market total right now is 60 billion. The
Yes.
top three are, what'd you say, ADP, Paychecks, and
yeah, ADP, Intuit, and or QuickBooks and Paychecks.
Paychecks, okay. And that's with only 40% of the employer market outsourcing their.
Well, the breakdown doesn't exist that I've found that talks about what the 60% use.
Oh,
They're
okay.
using something,
Okay,
right? They're just not going to a payroll provider like their local CPA, right? They're not having somebody else actually do that for them. They're keeping it internal, and they're leveraging, most likely, probably QuickBooks, most likely.
okay, all right.
But they don't have what it means is they don't have somebody that they can call.
Yeah.
Other than the software company they're getting that from.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like to me you got two huge opportunities. One, and I've been associated with two of the three that you're speaking about personally. And so 60 billion and there's a 60% opportunity, to increase that. So it sounds pretty significant to me,
And so let's talk about, there's a kind of an elephant in the room when we talk about that too. With a $60 billion a year industry, and you have three dominant players, as I'm looking at the numbers, they represent roughly 35% of the entirety of the providing software space.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're talking about 65% is everybody else.
Wow.
Where oh shoot, thought went in, thought went out. What you had asked me? Oh, opportunity.
Yeah.
And the 60% and the 40% of employers and what they're doing. Oh, and so the approach and the elephant in the room is it becomes marketing and branding. And how do you get in front of those people?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a real big believer in recreating the wheel. How did they do it? They went to the professional in the space and said, hey, check out our software, recommend it to your clients, send us your business, because we know you don't want to do it. And when's the last time you actually tried to do payroll by hand using the IRS tables and calculation methods, right? Could you? Sure.
Yeah.
You could, I could, we know we could.
Sure.
What a pain in the butt that would be.
Right.
One of the biggest challenges that we do face as a company is competing with three huge market players. However, I believe, and our experience in the last 18 months is showing clearly the dissatisfaction in the space. So to reach out to a very, very targeted market is extremely easy. And one of those players makes it very easy for us to do it.
Sure.
And the level of disenfranchised, there's the word, yeah, I'll get it out, where I know as a user of that particular product, if there was something that I could go to that made sense, I'd be off it in a heartbeat. And I can't wait to get off that once, well, actually in this week. So it's very exciting. We're in exciting times. Capturing market share becomes the real interesting opportunity, I think, for wholesale payroll. And I don't know if you were going to head that direction in asking that question, but I'm going to go there.
Well, yeah,
With this answer is, we can attempt to put a huge sales staff out there like our competitors have done and try to snipe each of these small employers. That's a lot of time and energy. And obviously that costs a lot of money versus using a shotgun approach where I can go to a CPA, a bookkeeper, an enrolled agent, somebody that's already in the space and say, gang, we only sell this to you. We only succeed if you succeed. So we've created a business model for you that you can actually make a nice profit and compete against these other bigger players and outperform them like nobody can imagine. But I would tell you that's a pretty smart marketing strategy.
absolutely.
I'm biased, obviously. What do you think?
Well, I think it's good because I think your key factor is you don't have to recreate the relationship. You know, whenever you're out there trying to sell something, you know, the biggest hurdle you have is the relationship hurdle. And by using existing practitioners, they already have the relationship. And a lot of those relationships are longstanding. We're talking about
Yes,
years.
they are.
You know, because many people don't want to make that change. You know, they don't want to change their CPA. They don't want to change their lawyer. And they don't want to change their doctor because those are very intimate relationships. You know, that.
Let me ask you a question on that, because you're right. Accountants, lawyers, doctors, people don't change usually until they have to, because that professional is right. There's three reasons. They're either new to the environment and they have to find somebody, so they get a referral.
Yeah.
They have a relationship and it's become too painful to bear, so they're looking, or that professional is no longer in the space and they're forced to go do it.
Correct.
Right. Very few people go, oh, I'm looking for an opportunity. Let me go find this other thing because I'm so happy with what I have. I'll go look for something happier. Right. And those environments, it doesn't really happen. Agreed?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
In payroll specifically, Dave, in your experience, what do you think is take money aside, put that on the shelf. What would be your biggest hang up or biggest challenge or the biggest roadblock to say, we're not going to switch from this, even though this is painful and I'm not happy with it, I'm not going to switch over here because why? What would be that one thing that would kind of surface, or maybe the first two things that come to mind as to why I'm not going to switch?
The success of making the conversion.
Thank you. Okay. I was hoping you'd say that first.
There it is.
Migration, right?
Migration.
What a pain in the butt.
Exactly.
In your experience, what happens when you do those migrations in payroll?
It's a disaster.
Why? What happens?
Just simple things like the data, the tax ID numbers, people's social security numbers. I mean, one, you have a lot of exposure of information, bank account information, social security numbers, birth dates, names, addresses. I mean, you have, all the intimate details, of, between 5 and 5,000 people that you're responsible for, but making sure that it's accurate and it gets to the right buckets. I had a conversation with somebody in town a couple of weeks ago, and it dealt with one of the companies that you named. And they just wanted to take all their payroll from one tax ID number and split it based on different enterprises that they had going on. It was a
Couldn't do it.
disaster. Couldn't do it.
They probably couldn't get it
Messed
done.
it up.
And let me ask you this question. When you have looked at that problem of converting, were you ever able to actually maintain the history that existed in the previous system?
No,
Would you determine that to be a fairly significant problem?
very significant.
Why is it a problem?
Because you have to keep it for IRS purposes. One, you have to have, and things happen, things change, mistakes are made, and you need to be able to go back effectively and be able to recapture that.
So what does that mean to you? Because that's an interesting phrase you just used, to be able to go back effectively. What do you mean by that?
Effectively means I don't want to have to flip through. I don't want to have to call the storage facility and have them flip through boxes of paper to find the one document that may be clipped or stapled or stuck to another document that they couldn't find. So then I got to do it myself in order to get it. But those things have happened to me in the past. And,
Sure.
We live in an electronic age. It should be, easily accessible, easily identifiable.
So can I address that?
Sure.
I'm going to address it from two perspectives.
I would love to, because I've had that experience myself personally.
Anybody that's ever run payroll and switched a payroll enterprise software or any kind of software has had this issue. And on one hand, you have the software provider who views that customer's data as their data, not the customer's data.
Right.
It's not your information, it's our information.
Yeah.
So we have a perspective of ownership that should not exist, yet it does. And for people who aren't in this space, this is a major issue.
Yeah.
And when you go to leave, you can only leave in a way in which they dictate you can take your information. And most times, if you're lucky, you can get it in an Excel file. You generally never get it in a CSV file format that's consumable elsewhere, right? It's in some kind of Excel file where it's formatted to look really pretty, but it's really highly unusable.
Yes.
To look back on. Agreed?
Agree.
Okay. Thank you. Because
I agree.
you're just validating some more stuff for everybody who's going to watch this, and certainly for me, because
or it's limited.
Or it's limited.
Or you don't get the whole picture. You
Right.
get what they want to give you. And many times it's because their systems don't have the capability of archiving the information in a way that ends up being useful for you when you go to do that migration. So it's their cost cutting procedures that ends up affecting you in the long run when you try to do something like that.
So let me approach from the other angle. It's our position, and it's fundamental to what we do as a company, as a software provider of payroll. That information of the past is so valuable to the enterprise, not to us, to the employer of whatever size is. And I like to use this. There's a couple examples in Florida, which is where our corporate headquarters are, that really resonate with people here. And that's the Gulf oil spill, Deepwater Horizon, when that occurred. And anybody in the Gulf will understand this in just a second. And of course, everybody in the country experienced COVID and the ERTC and the EIDL, application and loan and credit process. In those examples, anybody that had switched a payroll company during those times did not have the ease of finding the information necessary to complete applications. They couldn't just run reports. And if you're in a loan process or you're doing some kind of financial audit or anything that would necessitate the need of longer term of information so that you could run your reports, do your operational evaluations and things like that, you switch a payroll company, it's not there anymore. If
Yeah.
you don't have it really well documented inside your financial software, whatever that is, and you rely on the software of the payroll provider, oh my gosh, you just don't have it. It's non-existent. Try to go back to these companies that I've mentioned and some other ones too, after 3 to 6 months that you've left them. They're not helping you, period. They don't care.
Absolutely.
And try to get a W-2 from the previous year or 2 or 3 years ago. They forget it. They won't do it. We've solved this problem in a very modern, very techy, very comprehensive solution. There is a problem that exists in doing what we have done, and it's taken a lot of time in engineering and solution solving to do. And that is, imagine that you're coming out of one of those 3 that we mentioned, and you're going into a new platform. How do you tell that new platform all of the taxes and the calculations that were done by the previous platform in today's current terms? You have to rewind the clock, go back to that date and time, and process running it forward. Well, that's resources and logic and engineering to do that. That's what we've done.
Mhm.
We've taken modern processes and we will go into another provider's platform and scrape out all of that information. We will get all of that information one way or another. We will get it so that companies that are on our platform coming from somewhere else don't lose any of that history.
Mhm.
There is continuity to what they have at their own fingertips and disposal with all of the new features and functions and tools that we make available. So the challenge to migration, that challenge, the very first thing you thought of, if you had a company of one of the ones that you and I have talked about more recently, I want to say was like 150 or 250.
Yeah, 250.
250. Imagine that we could have that migrated inside of 2 days with all that history.
Would be amazing. And we're not talking only just 250, but we're talking multi-state.
Yeah.
So 250 people across 12 states.
And from a data perspective, what do you have? Names, addresses, all the PII, right? The socials in the bank. Then you have their earnings and the tax and deductions, and maybe some contributions of health insurance or retirements, or maybe some garnish, whatever that is.
Yep.
All you're doing is talking about data points, right?
Yep.
And so you've got to have the mechanism that can say, oh, here it is in this system. Let's interpret that. Let's restructure it and let's drop it into ours so that you as the user can now use this from here over here. And it, while it may have a little bit of a different look, because of course it's a different UI experience, it's a different interface, the data is there. And then think about this. If you're with a company that says, we need to earn your business every month, it's not our data, it's your data. And with the click of a button, you can get everything back out in a CSV style format, or even perhaps what's known as a JSON API file that another platform can take and use. And if it was that easy to do, which it is, we better be on our toes to make sure we're keeping Dave happy.
Yep, exactly.
So the difference of, I think, going back to some of the value proposition points, is it's the professional's book of business. It's your book of business. It's not our book of business.
Yeah.
Everybody constitutes our book of business, but because we rely upon those professionals and servicing them in such a way as to eliminate a migration challenge, to eliminate profitability, to eliminate the competition coming from the people who have we have insider information, right? We know more about what's going on than the individual practitioner, because we see, to eliminate that kind of competition and to say, we're here to help you grow to the size and scale that you want to get to, whatever that is. Whatever it is. Do Do you just want it as a sideline hobby business? Great. Is it just an adjunct to doing books and taxes? Great. Do you want to make it something that's a major profit center? Great. We can show you how to do all those things by leveraging what we have. So it's pretty cool.
That's good. What makes your idea viable?
Well, my gut reaction was, well, everybody's already doing it. So it's the idea in and of itself isn't new. Our approach to delivering the way that idea has traditionally been done is new. And that's what makes it viable, at least in my opinion. And the 36 of our client advisory council would agree with that. Some of the folks that we've recently talked to would also agree with that in terms of some of the things that we've talked about. The professional being ultimately the person who builds all of this for anybody in the space, because if the professional doesn't like it, their clients ain't going to use it. By providing that person, that individual, with an ability to earn a living, to leave a legacy for their own family, to grow a business that can withstand generations. Who else is doing that for these people?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was doing it for me, Dave. Not a single soul.
Right.
And I went, somebody needs to do this.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be us.
Yeah. What, I mean,
does that actually answer the question?
It does. It
Okay.
does. Have you test marketed this at all yet?
In terms of a list of known payroll professionals, we've called over 7,000 in the last 15 months, primarily between February and January, February of 22 and January of this year.
Okay.
23. Most of those calls were made then. And I don't know what kind of statistic you know about cold calling campaigns, and particularly marketing or branding or sales kind of campaigns. They generally have some pretty low numbers.
Yeah.
We have experience and continue. We've reinitiated this campaign, and we just did that Thursday of last week. Of the folks that, and we're dealing with a very niche market.
Yeah.
What we discovered is more than 20% of those that we called, then we physically spoke to. I'm not talking about hangups, or I'm not talking about bad phone numbers or voicemails. Of the folks that more than 20%, was closer to 30%, were ready to make a switch.
Wow.
They were so dissatisfied with what is in the market today.
Yeah.
That they were open to hearing. Now, we used college kids. That was another part of our process.
To make the phone calls?
To make the phone calls. These are kids that don't have any experience in business, typically, right? I mean, the ones that we had didn't. Their parents may have, and they may have seen it, but they didn't have their own personal experience. They all had jobs, of course.
Well,
they knew nothing about the space.
The other thing with college kids is they don't know how to address an objection. So if you're already getting 20%, I know that's got to be a good number, because college kids, okay, well, thank you very much, and they'll just hang up.
And to your point, you're exactly right. And we encouraged them to do that. We were not looking to, we didn't have anything to sell.
Yeah, right.
As this was going on, all we wanted people to do was go check out the site and say, we'd like to schedule a demo.
Yeah.
Nothing to sell you. Would you be interested in looking at a new product that's designed for and by accountants?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, kind of like what this says here in my screen. It's built just for people like me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was the kickoff, the restart of that approach, that marketing and branding approach. The numbers have gotten higher. That people are just that ready. So one of our major competitors has increased costs by over 200%.
They have.
Yeah.
I know 3 of them that I was associated with, geez, in the past year have all had dramatic price increases.
And so it's an interesting trend in what's going on in the market with these bigger players. I believe what's happening is the outsourcing of the professional industry in the United States to other countries by these software companies who recognized the differential. I think it's a bunch of statistical analysts, but the logistic, actuaries. Gosh, actuaries sitting back going, okay, we know we're going to lose a certain number of people by making these decisions. However, we're going to gain a lot more by doing this. And what I have definitely felt and seen, and so have my peers, companies are hiring fairly well-educated and definitely well-educated professionals that could obtain licenses in the United States out of India, Philippines, primarily those two countries, and they can pay them a lot less money per hour and force my peers in the States out of business because they price their product in such a way as to say, well, you can do this and then you have to have somebody else help you. And now you're being charged American rates, or we're just going to put you into this one. Yeah, it's significantly, it's costly, but you have all this help. Yeah, your help is good luck. They're educated. They know the material, but you have language and cultural barriers that I find to be extremely challenging, particularly when you're dealing with something as sensitive as payroll. And it's super frustrating when you have to explain yourself 5 and 6 times to try to get something done, when in theory, you know exactly what you need done. Why doesn't the software allow you to do it?
Sure.
Because the software does it. You just have to make a phone call or a chat or something or an email and say, hey, I need this change made. So you know that the software can handle it and do it. They just don't let you do it.
Have you tested this?
Oh, yes. It's been heavily tested, and to the tune of thousands of transactions monitored and viewed. We did do a soft launch and I think the last time we spoke about the challenge that you were facing for that customer of yours, I had anticipated being ready to help you within a matter of days or weeks. And we did a really large soft launch, and it uncovered some issues.
Yeah.
We either could try to solve those as we went along and halted our development or slowed that development down, or we could put a halt to it and refocus, finish off what really ended up being some pretty critical development pieces. And that's the direction that we ended up taking, is we halted that and said, okay, we're not going to bring all these folks on. We've got over 1,000 employers to bring onto this platform when we give it the green light. And I hope to be giving that green light the end of this week.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And we have a very, very, very well thought out, planned out onboarding of who we currently have waiting in the wings, and then allowing the public at large to, from a professional standpoint, to come on the platform and get them migrated and onboarded and get rolling. That won't be until July 3rd. We're going to a conference at the end of June, and our focus is on helping all of our folks from last year, all of our client advisory and early access subscribers, to get all of their clients and customers onboarded and let them have time on the system for a few weeks, so we can make sure that we are in a position to allow anybody to become a subscriber and use the platform.
Now, is the professional your only target market?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and that professional, Dave, is very interesting because it can be a little bit fluid.
Yep.
So there are about 312 thousand in the United States.
All right.
That's according to IBIS World.
Okay.
And we have additional target markets that could resell this platform. And they don't necessarily have to be a payroll professional or an accountant or an enrolled agent. The challenge, so think about an insurance, somebody who's B2B and somebody who's in insurance selling commercial or D&O or liability, whatever. They could, in theory, start a payroll practice inside of their company, inside of their firm. They're not in that space. So what do they do to solve the question of one of their clients saying, hey, I got an issue, I need to know this, that, or the other when it comes to payroll? Are they really going to staff that? The answer is no. However, we have two solutions to that. They can either partner up with an existing subscriber, right, and do some kind of joint venture, or we have a ancillary sister company called Payroll Support, and we will provide the staff necessary to facilitate the processing for those particular clients.
Mm-hmm. What's your marketing strategy like for those practitioners?
It's been so we have a new strategy that it's always been there, but we're actually going to be able to deploy it beginning next month. But the strategy is to go directly to the CPAs, the enrolled agents, the bookkeepers, the payroll professionals through social media, through direct calls, through mailings, through social events, being part of podcasts and webinars, and going to, and there are at least 2 conferences a year. This year, we haven't decided on the second conference. That's the HR Tech Conference that's in Vegas. We do support and go to what's called Scaling New Heights. And we do that. We went last year. We're going again this year. We don't anticipate not ever going there, right? We'll always go to this one as long as they're going to host it. And they do that in different parts of the country. This year, it'll be in St. Louis. And it's our target market. They have anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 attendees at this conference that are all in the space. They're bookkeepers and accountants. And majority of them do something with payroll. And so we have a captured audience. It's very niched. And in terms of more of the social outreach, our marketing strategy is these professionals are on LinkedIn. They're on social. We can find them. We can tell them, we can tell who they are. And so reaching out to them is a little grassroots.
Specifically, what do you need the funds for?
In our case, we wanted to allow our subscribers and their customers the opportunity to own a part of the payroll company that they're paying to have. That was the original intent. And imagine that you could own a piece of ADP or Paychex or Intuit at its very beginning. The secondary reason is kind of the meat on the bones. We do need to expand our staff. We would like to be able to hit our roadmap items faster. If we could fill out this crowdfunding offer at $1 million, we certainly could bring in the staff necessary. We would bring that staff in now. So we would supercharge our development by adding that staff. That's the majority of all of this is for staffing needs. That we have some additional licensing requirements. And those licensing requirements are a little bit on the costly side. So we'll leverage some of the crowdfunding to supplement that.
Okay. How much, and you can either, I mean, I'm not sure how specific you need to get in terms of this question, but how much have you put into the game so far?
If they go to the crowdfunding page through ChainRaise, there is a audited financial. So you'll see the equity in there. You'll see what's been put in as of 2022. Gotcha. So I have to defer that question to the documents that actually are publicly allowed to exist.
Okay. That's good.
And be seen.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot.
There's so much that's going on. It's so cool. I appreciate the impromptu-ness of you jumping on here and having this discussion.
Yeah.
And